Hello, welcome to another live. Here we are. Every Monday I'm here with a class and it's your chance to ask any questions related to NLP, related to mindset, beliefs, the unconscious mind, emotions, and also dance, embodiment, and numerology. So yeah, there's a lot of things, incorporated in my work. So this is your chance to ask any questions. If there are any challenges that you're going through at the moment in your life, then here you have some free coaching support, because not everyone can afford a one-on-one session with me. And I offer these classes as an opportunity for those who can't afford one-on-one sessions. Here you have this chance to ask some questions. And for today's session, I wanted to have a look at the cards. So I have done a couple of lives on these before, and it's a really wonderful way where we can get some wonderful topics and talk about these wonderful topics. So these are the Creating Change cards. If you want a card deck, let me know, and yeah, I can send them to wherever you are. Obviously, like postage is an additional price on that, though. Yeah, these are really wonderful cards to reflect on a particular topic. That you can, there are many different ways to use these. I have a download, like a PDF download on my website, and those people who have the cards, you can download that for free, and it has different ways that you can use these cards. One way is simply just to pick a card a day, and that's your reflection for the day. And then also you can actually like ask a question, like have something specific in your mind and then pick a card. You can also pick a card for past, present, and future as well. That can also bring some insights. So there are many different ways to use these cards, and there are many different messages on these, and they give some useful tips. I made these many years ago. This was when, on the pack it says 2019. I had to think then. I forgot when I made it because it was a while ago. Yeah, so 2019 was a different world then, though the messages are still useful. And these are accumulation of many years of things that I was sharing online. So all these messages I was sharing online, and I thought, wow, why not make a card deck? These would be really useful as a card deck. So I'm going to share 3 cards, and you can decide which one is for you. 1, 2, or 3. So like now, tune in, like which number do you feel drawn to? I will share the messages of all of them, but at the moment, if you were to decide 1, 2, or 3, what would you choose? And I will just pick cards now. So we got 1, 2, and 3. So 3 messages. Which one do you feel drawn to? Let's start with number 1. I have no idea what what message will come. It will be a surprise for all of us. Okay, so, and some of these messages I might have covered before, though some of them may be new as well. It depends, because I'm just picking these at random. Okay, so people are not their behaviors. You are not your behavior. Acknowledge your values, maintain healthy boundaries, and communicate to the being within. So there's that card. So what does that mean? What does that mean? So when you think of that, when you hear that, like people are not their behaviors, what does that bring up for you? And when you hear you are not your behavior, what does that bring up for you? Acknowledge your values, maintain healthy boundaries, and communicate to the being within. When you hear that, what comes up for you? So yeah, this is the thing. Sometimes, especially in relationships, or like family relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, in relationships, when someone does something or says something that triggers us, essentially what they're doing is they're pressing a button on an old wound of ours that has come from, often from childhood. And often it's not really about what they've said and done, it's just that it's reminding us of a past hurt, rejection, abandonment, wound, like something along those lines. And sometimes it's very easy to be focused on the surface level and be like, oh, they said that, or they did that. Like if we're talking about behaviors, like thinking about what they did, like, oh, they didn't clean up in the kitchen, or they didn't take the rubbish out, or they didn't buy something from the shops when I asked them to, or they didn't, I'm just making up random examples, or they didn't, or they forgot to call when they said that they were going to call, or they like, yeah, all those different things, like something that they did or they didn't do, like whatever behavior that is. And sometimes we're focused on the behavior, that we're just like, oh, like, why do they always do that? Like a common a common one is like, I see on the online space and hear from women sometimes is, and not to say that this is like a for all men, of course it's not, though a very common one I've heard is like, oh, why can't he pick up his socks? Why can't, like they're complaining about their partner or their husband, like, why can't he just clean up after himself? And there's this focus on the behavior. So when we're only focused on the behavior, we're missing the full picture. When we're only focused on what's being done or not done, we're missing something, because it goes much deeper than that. It goes much deeper. There's so many different layers to it. It's like, okay, yeah, like what is this triggering? What is it really about? What is really desired? What's really desired? Is it feeling acknowledged, feeling like remembered? Is it feeling loved? Like whatever it is, there's something that behavior triggers something in the other person. So get curious. If you're that other person, if you're triggered by a behavior by someone, like get curious, like, okay, what is that triggering? And what is like, what's really underneath that? What am I desiring? To feel more loved, to feel more accepted, to feel more safe, to feel fill in the blank. And of course, I'm not talking about, it's important to mention this, I'm not talking about abusive behavior or anything that is harmful, like harmful and abusive, like that is not on, and that is something that needs to be addressed and seek support if you're experiencing that. I'm just talking about like general little things that can often come up in relationships and friendships and family dynamics, that there can be these behaviors that annoy us. Like I've I've experienced in the past, like someone just leaves all the cupboard doors open in the kitchen and just doesn't close the cupboard doors. That triggers me. So then there's an opportunity for me to then get curious, be like, okay, like what's triggering about that? Like what is this giving me an opportunity to really like look at and learn about myself. So first it's like it gives us a lot of insight, and we can learn a lot about ourselves and about others. And everyone has their value system. Everyone has values. So you have your values, the other person has their values. And if you're in romantic relationship, ideally you want your values aligned with each other. Different family members, you can have different values sometimes, or they can be values in common as well. Like friendships, there can be values in common and different values as well. So like noticing that you have your values and this other person has their values. Like you have your priorities and they have their priorities. And sometimes there can be some mismatch. Sometimes they may prioritize something else, whereas you prioritize a clean house and they prioritize relaxation, or vice versa. So it can get interesting just to notice that. So it's like getting curious and learning. And we can also like if something is really, really important, something that's really bothering us, we can set some healthy boundaries and just communicate. Communicate. Though when we can, like, one of the keys, I mean, this card says, like, people are not their behaviors. Like, when you're communicating, have this in mind, because often when there's this communication of like, you always do this, or you never do this, or blah, blah, blah. In NLP, it's what we call model operators when we use the words never or always, and talking about how something is just like, yeah, it's just like that all the time. It's like this generalization, and usually it's not always the case. It's not like that. It's not always like that. And bearing that in mind, that people are not their behaviors and that there's something else driving that behavior, or that they have some value or some priority there. When you go to communicate healthy boundaries and say, hey, like, this really triggers me and I'm learning XYZ. And also, I'd appreciate it if we can find some common ground and like find a solution that can work for both of us. And yeah, like find something that works. Or like, this is not okay for me and I need to share this. And this really triggers me and I'm working on my stuff, but I'm bringing it to the table because I would really like you to be mindful and sensitive of that as well. So there are many ways to go about it, but it can be useful just to notice, okay, people are not their behaviors, and yeah, having that in mind, that you then don't go into this attacking mode of like, you you always this, or you never this, or blah blah blah, which just creates more conflict, doesn't get the message across. It's just two ends up being two people talking from their wounding rather than talking from their being. And this is what this card is all about. It says communicate to the being within. Communicate to the being within. Remember that deep within there is a human being. There's a human being there. And yeah, they will have their personality, they will have their habits, they will have their values, they will have their traits and their tendencies to do different things. Though deep within, there's this being. So when we communicate to the being rather than the surface level behavior or whatever's triggering us, is a whole different conversation. Doesn't mean that we ignore whatever is being triggering or like what's important to discuss, though. It's just like being mindful. It's like, okay, I will communicate this hurt or this upset or whatever emotion it is, though from the place of love, by communicating to the being within the other human person. So yeah, there's many more things that I could share about this. Though I think this is a pretty important one, like not only for relationships and friendships and family, but also in society. I mean, look at how things are with humanity at the moment, and yeah, just remembering that whilst there can be people with different opinions and different beliefs about things and go about things in different ways, that if we were to all communicate to the beings within, and if you don't like the word being, you can just think about the heart, like the heart of that person, like communicate to that person's heart or that inner child within that person. And it's like, wow, or the life within that person. It's like, okay, yes, how would the world be different if we did that? What would change? I think quite a lot. Okay, so that was card number 1. Here's card number 2. Let's see what message we have. Okay, spirituality is embracing the physical too. Enjoy the pleasures and sensations whilst remembering who you really are. An energy, a soul, it's both hand in hand. Human being equals human plus being. There seems to be a thread here with the previous cards. Yeah. So this is the thing. I remember when I wrote this that I was seeing a lot of spiritual bypassing in the online space and in the self-development space. And essentially spiritual bypassing is when there is this tendency to like only focus on love and light. It's like, oh yeah, fear is low vibration. I'm just going to put it down there and only focus on love and light. And when we do that, we completely bypass. It's a spiritual bypassing, and we're missing the gifts and the insights, the goals that's within the shadow, that's within these deeper emotions. And if we're like only focusing on love and light and like only this, only that, it's like we're missing the whole human experience. Like this human experience is everything. It's the stuff that we like and stuff we don't like, the stuff that we find easy and the stuff we find challenging. It's happiness and sadness. It's joy, it's all of those like uplifting emotions, and then it's the heavier ones like the grief and the anger and the jealousy and all these different emotions. You can't just have one and say that you're wholehearted. You can't just focus on one and say that you're living a wholehearted human spiritual experience, because really living this like really living in the fullness of this human experience is to embrace everything. And of course, like within reason. I'm not talking about embracing violence and all of that, though there's certainly things that we can learn if it arises and if it occurs in humanity. So yeah, the reason why I wrote this is that I was seeing so often like people were just like focusing on what they call the good stuff and the love and light. And often a lot of what that is dissociation. It's dissociating from the fullness of this human experience. And often in spirituality and spiritual spaces, there's often this dissociation of escaping and going out of the human body and ascending, transcending into somewhere else and going somewhere else, and forgetting the sacredness of the human body. When we're embodied, when we come back to the body, when we're connected to the senses, when we feel the sensations and the pleasures of life and like what we see, what we hear, what we feel, like all of this, like when we connect to this and we come back to the body, wow, like that adds another level to this whole human experience. Life becomes a lot fuller, becomes a lot richer, becomes a lot more like vibrant. To seek outside of ourselves and to place all of our power to some guru somewhere. And no offense if you follow a guru, but it's like if we're only doing that and we're forgetting the sacredness of the human body, or we're forgetting the sacredness that's within the depths of sadness, or in the fiery passion of anger, if we forget the sacredness in jealousy or envy, that we're missing something. And yes, of course, there's a difference between like remaining stuck in fear and acting out of fear on a regular basis, and then just moving through it, learning from it, allowing it to pass through like this emotion, energy in motion. It just flows through. And we get to the other side and we realize that fear is actually an invitation to courage, to connect with courage. Anger invites us to connect with passion. Sadness invites us to create deeper connection, and many more gifts. It's just remembering that we're both. We have this human physical body, and there's that spark of life within, and we're animating this physical body, and we're in this human experience to learn, grow, and evolve thanks to everything that we experience here in the physical, whilst not forgetting that spark within, that light within. It's like, it's not just one or the other. Like sometimes there are different groups of people that, like, some people are only focused on the material side of life, and anything that is non-tangible is like, oh, they dismiss it. There's life within. Like, it's important to recognize that there's something animating. There's life that threads through everything and everyone. There's something animating that, and that gives us this spark in the eyes that helps us to breathe. It's not just like a static object, like we're not objects. But then also, we're not here to escape the physical. We're not here to move away from the body and transcend into some spiritual plane. We're here to learn from this physical experience. So that was card number 2. So I'd love to hear like what resonates for you out of that, if anything comes up for you from that card. And now let's have a look at message number 3. Redefine the limitation and it ceases to be a limitation. What perspective have you yet to consider? So how we perceive things, how we view things, transforms our experience of things. We are experiencing so many things. There are so many pieces of information, like bits of information coming towards us through our senses, what we see, what we hear, what we feel. So at the moment, as I'm doing this YouTube live, I'm aware of the light. I have a light that's right here, so I'm aware of the light. I can see colors around me. I can hear my neighbor with the motorbike. I can feel the contact of my body against the chair. I can feel the contact of clothes against my skin. I can notice the temperature of the air as I'm breathing in and out. I can feel the contact of my feet on the ground, on the floor. I can hear the birds singing outside, the bird song. Like, there are all these different things. There's all this information coming towards me. And all of this information, we attach meaning. We attach meaning to it. So some information might just be neutral and other information becomes significant for us. And a lot of that is filtered according to our unconscious filters, what we believe about ourselves, about life, about the world. And a lot of those beliefs, so it's not just beliefs, it's also values, and culture comes into this, language comes into this. There's many different filters, unconscious filters. Though one of the most common ones is looking at the beliefs, like the perspectives that we have about life. And a lot of that information is like, I see it like a post office. It's like all these letters coming in and they get sorted out, and the unconscious mind deletes things, distorts things, and generalizes things according to our belief system. Our belief system is a blueprint. It's a blueprint. Everyone has their own blueprint. It's like, okay, yeah, someone who has been through war and terror and really hardship, like hard times and challenges, and like has a lot of trauma, will have a very different belief system compared to someone who has just had a really idyllic life, a very easy life, being able to leave the house and not bother locking it because no one's going to come and steal things. Like, depending where you are, like I noticed that where I grew up in England, like back in the day, maybe not now, but back in the day, we could just like leave the house unlocked and it was very safe. And now, living like just outside of Barcelona and going to Barcelona, and like in Barcelona, I have this belief, okay, I need to keep hold of my bag because it's something I've experienced. I've experienced having my bag stolen and things taken, and a lot of people have. It's something that's very common in Barcelona. So our beliefs are there, and sometimes they can be helpful. So that belief for me can be quite helpful because it makes me more mindful of where I put my things and where my bag is, and not to be not to just like leave my mobile or leave my bag on a chair and not really look after it. And then sometimes beliefs can be unhelpful. They limit us in some way. So the card is saying, like, redefine the limitation. So sometimes there can be a belief like all men are, fill in the blank, or all women are, fill in the blank, all people are, like a common one, rich people are, fill in the blank. Like, notice what beliefs come up. Are there any limiting beliefs? Are there any beliefs that limit you in some way? If you believe that rich people are mean, for example, then if you're trying to get more money on an unconscious level, you may be avoiding receiving more money because you don't want to be a mean person, because it might be something that's conflicting with your values. So it's interesting to notice that. So, okay, like, what am I believing about myself, about others, about life, about the world? How can you redefine it? Like, how can you challenge that belief and see something differently? Like shift the perspective. When we shift the perspective, everything changes. Everything changes. Our experience of it changes. So you can ask yourself, like, what perspective have I yet to consider? If you're going through a particular challenge and you have this repeated story, which often happens, this repeated story of like, oh, like, it's always like this, or there they go again, or there he goes again, or look at that, like, whatever the story is. Oh, that's just my luck, or like, I always get bad luck, or whatever the story is about ourselves or others. It's like, okay, what perspective have you yet to consider? What other story can you focus on? How can you rewrite that story? And by doing so, notice what changes. Notice what changes. It's really interesting to observe this, and this is the main work of what I do with NLP when I'm working with coaching clients, is really getting them to pay attention to their stories and to rewrite the stories. Say, okay, how can I see it differently? What have I yet to consider? Is it always like that? Or is it never like how we want it to be? Or perhaps have there been times that we've overlooked or missed? Get curious. Get curious. So if you have any beliefs, any limiting beliefs, you can pop them in the comment section and we can break those down. It's something really straightforward and simple to do. Like, one simple way to do it is, okay, if there's a limiting belief, what's the positive opposite? And then find evidence in your life that supports the positive opposite. That's one of the quickest ways to start breaking down a limiting story. So if the limiting belief is I am ugly, the positive opposite would be I am beautiful. Have you got evidence where someone's given you a compliment, perhaps, on your appearance? That's evidence that proves the positive opposite true. So therefore, the limiting belief can't be 100% true if you have evidence supporting the opposite. That's just a quick way to start reframing things and opening up the perspective. So those are the 3 cards. The first one, people are not their behaviors. So communicate direct to their heart, to their being, to who they truly are. rather than just communicating to their behavior. And then the other one, remember that people are human beings, and it's this beautiful combination of remembering the spiritual side, that spark of life, and also that humanness that creates this wonderful, wonderful experience that we call life. And redefine the limitation, like what perspective have you yet to consider? Get curious. So those are the cards for today. I'd love to hear your shares on this, like what resonated, if any of those came up for you that you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I needed. Then yeah. And if you have any topic requests, then please do like put them in the chat. I read all the comments. If there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about related to anxiety, related to NLP, related to belief work, related to emotions, behaviors, habits, values, all of that, and also embodiment, like coming back to the body and numerology. So all these different aspects of my work. So if there are any questions, and if you have any like personal questions as well, like if you're curious to know like how I've overcome certain things or what I'm currently moving through, or like how, like if you're thinking about becoming a coach, I've trained many different NLP practitioners in the past, and yeah, it's like many people wanting to walk this path. So if you have questions about that as well, then please do pop it in the chat. I'm happy to share from my many years of experience. There's still a lot that I don't know, and many things that I'm still learning, though I do have 11 years in the coaching field. So there's quite a few things that I've learned along the way, with plenty of mistakes I've made, and therefore many insights and learnings. So coming up, there's a couple of events coming up. So if you're in the Barcelona, Vilanova i Geltrú area, there's a few events coming up. So this week, this Friday, I have a dance event where we're mixing numerology with dance. So it's a really wonderful experience and a really wonderful combination of like being embodied and getting connected with the body whilst you learn something interesting like numerology. And numerology, if you're new to numerology, the form that I use stems from Pythagoras. So basically it's looking at how each number has a meaning, has a message, and we can uncover lots of different insights in terms of our name and our date of birth. So in these classes, what we do is we explore the messages through dance, and it's really interesting. It's like, okay, if we're working with, like, for example, a few weeks back, we were working with number 6, which is all about the heart, unconditional love. So we were working with this balance of giving and receiving, and how does that show up in the dance? Like how can we create this balance and not being too overly focused on the other, and also not being too closed off and not open to receiving ourselves. So it's like finding that balance, that giving and receiving. So on Friday, we'll be doing that. We'll be exploring number 9, which is all about humanity, all about like sharing, like from this generosity from the heart, like really giving from the heart. So it'll be a wonderful experience. And it's also all about transformation and ending cycles. So that's on Friday at 7, and that's €10 when you reserve in advance. So you can just send me a WhatsApp at +34 6226 98673. And then the week after, we have a women's circle in Barcelona, and that's obviously for women. And we'll be exploring our inner medicine women, and we'll be getting creative. So we'll be doing a few activities with local herbs and really like getting creative with this. Like the reason why I wanted to do this, because I've seen that there was like as much as I love cacao, I do love cacao, but it's almost like a fashion now that there's so many cacao ceremonies, and I kind of feel like it is such a shame when we're importing something that's very sacred and very healing, but we're importing so much from another country. I mean, if you live in a place of cacao, then great, go ahead, use it. But also there's the topic of sustainability. Like, we don't want to overuse the plants. Though where I live, it is like cacao's not grown traditionally here. So it's like it's being imported, and then everyone's doing these cacao ceremonies, and we're missing the medicine of the local plants and herbs that we have here. And it might not be as exciting for some people, like thyme and rosemary and lavender, though they are incredibly healing. And this is something that I want to bring into the women's circle. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the plants of the land here and what messages they bring, and enjoying some herbal teas and making some smudging sticks using local herbs, and also having an NLP guided visualization, which is all about connecting to that inner medicine woman within. So we'll have a chance to connect with that inner medicine woman and strengthen your trust in your own intuition. So that will be on Thursday, the 23rd of May. So if you want information about that, send me a message. And yes, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're not a woman or you're not based in this area, then these classes continue online every week, every Monday, and one-on-one sessions also worldwide. So I work with most of my clients actually online. I do some in-person sessions, but I work with clients from many different countries. So all around Spain, but also like I work with clients who are based in Switzerland, Netherlands, in the States, in the UK. So like there's even China, many different places. So yeah, that's the beauty about online work, that we can talk to anyone, anywhere. So yes, if you're interested in that, there's more information on my website, and it's a really wonderful way to have some specific support. I mean, in these classes, I can give general support, but in the one-on-one sessions, everything is tailor-made for you. And I have a very special like 3-session pack, which is what most people go for, and that's one of the best options to really start coming back to a place of calm and confidence, and start reducing anxiety. So if that's something that you want to step into your authentic confidence and connect with calm, then there's more information on my website. So thank you so much for being here. So thank you for tuning in, whether you've been like watching the live or whether you're watching the replay. Thank you so much, and I'll be back again next Monday at 7 Central European Time. And if you have any topic requests, then please do let me know. Sending much love.